Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Ball, and I'm a librarian in the Business and Economics Department at Central Library at Los Angeles Public Library. Welcome to today's program, Starting a Business, What You Need to Know. I am pleased to introduce today's presenters, Bob O'Neill and Dick Mader, who are both volunteer mentors with SCORE of Los Angeles. They will be presenting on the legal requirements for a startup business, as well as actions that are simply smart to do. Key topics that will be discussed include naming your business, licenses and taxes, insurance, financing sources, elements of a business plan, and marketing considerations. This program is being recorded, so if you miss any part of it, you can always come back and rewatch it here on the library's YouTube page. Also, please add any questions you have into the chat box, and we have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I'd now like to pass the presentation over to Bob and Dick.
Good morning, folks. My name is Dick Mader, and we're going to go through starting a business, what you need to know. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. We're your hosts. We are both mentors in the Los Angeles chapter of SCORE, Bob O'Brien and Dick Mader. Next slide. Next slide. Just going to take a few minutes to tell you about SCORE of Greater Los Angeles. We're all volunteers, and we help people start a business or improve their business. And we do it in three ways. One is we have a great website. You can see it on the screen there, losangeles.score.org. Lots of great resources that you can poke through and bring back from time to time. And we really recommend that you look at all the screens and all the resources that are there. Secondly, we do a series of no cost or very low cost workshops, and currently they're all online, but they are interactive and they are live, so you can ask questions and the presenter can make sure that they adapt the presentation to the people that are actually watching. And again, there's almost one a day, and they cover things like doing business with Amazon. Bob and I do one every month called Starting a Business, What You Need to Know. There's also ones on social media, doing a business plan, and also financial projections. And the heart of our program is working with a mentor. And what that means is that you get assigned to a mentor, and that you might just meet with that mentor once, you get some information, you get what you need, and off you go. Or it could be ongoing. And those are the relationships that we as mentors get the best benefit of, because we can see growth and we can make suggestions to you throughout the life of your business. So it's really up to you. And we would suggest that you go to our website, look at the different mentors that are there, and look at their skills, look at their experiences, their work experience, to see how that would meet with you. And currently we meet most of our clients on Zoom. However, we also meet clients in libraries across Southern California, chambers of commerce, Starbucks, and sometimes McDonald's. And of course, if somebody has a brick and mortar business, we meet them in their business to hold a mentoring session to help them move along. Next slide. SCORE's long-term mission is to provide education and encouragement to entrepreneurs. We like to make sure that you have all the facts and all the information that you need to make intelligent decisions in your business. We don't give advice. We don't give legal advice or accounting advice, but we certainly can point you in the right direction, and we can tell you what we think. But we want you to end up being able to make intelligent, informed decisions about your business. Today's mission is we're going to try to provide a clear path with all the confusion of starting a business. We know that there's a lot of confusion about it. People tell you different things. We're going to try to show you a clear path through the confusion of starting a business. Next slide. Bob, go ahead.
Well, I'll introduce myself first. I was a salesman all of my life. I started actually in grade school. And then after I got out of the Army, I went to work for some major electrical manufacturers and sold in Detroit and Los Angeles. And then I switched companies to get a promotion, and I handled the Western United States. And during that time, I found the business model of a manufacturer's rep. And we represented people from all over the country. It was an independent business. So I started my business and ran it for 25 years. And then I made my last and best sale. I sold the company to my employees. Next slide.
I'm Dick Mader, and I'm as I mentioned, I'm a SCORE mentor. I'm also a business person and an entrepreneur. Like Bob, I started early selling newspapers on the corner, and I got such a big kick out of ending the day with money in my pocket at the age of 8 that I decided that I wanted to work hard and help my family with money, and ended up creating a distributorship in Los Angeles, distributing newspapers, magazines, books, and DVDs wholesale through places like airports and bookstores and other places where things are on sale. Just for keep reminder, we're not lawyers, we're not accountants. We can just talk about our experiences and also give you the information you need to make a good choice. Next slide.
Probably the best way to figure out a good business idea is to look around you and look at problems that you see every day. And when you run across one you know how to solve and would like to solve, that's a good idea to get started. And we recommend before you do anything, you really come up with an idea for your business. That's the first step before you do anything else. And once you've come up with a product or an idea or a service, the first thing we recommend you do is go see if you can sell it to a stranger and prove that your business can work. Next slide.
What we recommend that you do, as Bob said, is try to sell the idea or the product to somebody. But also it's important to make sure that you have a unique product or unique service so that you can fashion it in a way that people will go buy other people's businesses to come to you and buy your product or service. So you have to be unique. A good example of what I'm speaking of is a coffee shop. Sometimes people say, I'd like to buy or I'd like to start a coffee shop because Starbucks and Coffee Bean do so well. I want some of that business. Well, I don't know that we need another coffee shop like Starbucks or Coffee Bean. But if you wanted to start a coffee shop, you want to make sure that it's different than them. You want to make sure that you provide something that they don't provide. And again, that people will bypass to Starbucks to come to your coffee shop. So you want a unique selling proposition that you will do it better and give better service or whatever it is than the competition. We don't recommend that you try to do it on price. That's a really lousy way to compete, just because there will always be somebody else out there that will cut the price and you won't make any money. And you want to end up with we call an unfair advantage. How can you position yourself so that you do have an advantage over other businesses, and they will find it hard to compete with you. Next slide.
So
As Bob said
one of
earlier,
the things that we recommend you do is test market your idea, as I mentioned earlier. And a really good example of that is Zappo Shoes. The founder of the company said to all his friends that he wanted to sell shoes online. And all his friends told him, "You're crazy. People want to try them on, walk around to make sure they're comfortable, make sure that they're stylish. They're not going to buy any online." So what they did, this business started in Las Vegas. So they went down to a prominent shoe store, took pictures of about 10 different pairs of shoes, and put it up on a website. Within 5 days, they had a dozen or more orders. So they quickly shut down the website, but they now have proved the concept actually works. And if you've ever dealt with Zappos or heard anything about them, you know it really works. So check out your idea first and do a feasibility study. And this is really the first step in getting into business. Next slide.
but we suggest that you prepare a business plan. Now, there are really two kinds of business plans. One is the kind of business plan that maybe you've heard of, that's 20 or 30 pages and it's intimidating, and most people have a hard time getting through the entire business plan, and so they get discouraged and stop. This is what we call a lean business plan. As you can see, it's got about 12 or 14 different questions on it, and we recommend that you start with this lean business plan. And the way that you can go to our website and get the lean business plan, or you can email Bob or I, and we can send you a copy of it. And we do recommend that you print it out and answer the questions with pen and paper, and do this about 2 or 3 times over the course of maybe a week, and see how your answers might change from one rendition to the other. And it's not either right or wrong, but it will point out to you which areas you need to work on. So if your answers keep changing about, like, number 8, what suppliers do you need? Maybe you might, one time you write down 2 or 3 things, and then the next time you write down something else. That's a good sign that you really need to work on that particular item. And you can take this completed lean business plan to your mentor, and it's a great way to talk about your business and get input from your mentor. Again, you can get it from our website, or you can email Bob or I and get a copy sent to you. Next slide. Something that we think is important is to be realistic and do what we call a SWOT analysis. And it's basically SWOT, your strengths, your weaknesses, and that's about you, your strengths and your weaknesses. And then the OT is about opportunity and threats in the marketplace. And again, this is something you can work with your mentor on. Everybody has strengths, and everybody has some weaknesses. And what I mean by that is that, let's just say you're a hairstylist and you want to start your own business. And your strengths is that you know all the things about hair, all the chemicals, all the way to cut, the way to style, and adapt it to your clients. But you may not be very good at paying the bills and paying the rent and pricing properly and all of those things. So that might be your weakness. And it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a matter of recognizing that that's weakness is there, and making up for it by getting a partner that has can take care of those weaknesses, or maybe your spouse or a friend can help you with that, or a SCORE mentor can help you find ways to make up for that weakness. it's really important to really look at that, because we see that as sometimes why businesses fail, because people are so great at their craft, but not too good at the other stuff, the marketing, the accounting, the managing employees, and those things. So you want to really look at your strengths and weaknesses. Next slide.
What you want to do is when you get started, you find yourself some help. We call it a BAIL team. But the first thing you probably need to find is an accountant. Most of us are not really familiar with taxes and how they work and all of the pros and cons. So a good accountant will help you with that. An accountant can help you set up your books to keep track of everything. So an accountant's really a good ally. And then probably the next thing you want to look up is an insurance agent. And in your business, you're going to need different kinds of insurance. So find a couple of business insurance agents and pick one that you like. We also recommend you find a mentor, and that can be a SCORE mentor, or it can be somebody in your family that's been in business. And it's just a person to bounce ideas off of and get a reality check on them, and also somebody to encourage you. Business can be difficult when you're starting it, and it's nice to have somebody in your corner. Down the line, you're also going to probably need a lawyer, so it's good to find one of those. And if you can start your business and open a bank account in a small bank and get to know the bankers there, that can help you later on. And the way to find these people, I found, was by referrals. Ask people for referrals, and I found that was the best way to find your team. Next slide.
I just want to make a comment about the accountant. You may not need in the beginning a CPA. You may be able to find a bookkeeping service, and I just read about one, and they're actually a SCORE sponsor up in Santa Barbara, and they're a bookkeeping service, and part of it is online, and they also have people that you can talk to about setting up your business. So they're a bookkeeping service. They are accountants, but they're not CPAs. CPAs can be very expensive. Okay, the next thing that we recommend that you do is to name your business. You want to name a business that's kind of catching and people will remember. But you do have to follow the California naming guidelines, meaning you can't call your business the same as somebody else does. Only one business can use the same name in California. You want to make a name that really tells people what you do. Sometimes you see some names that are cute words, but it doesn't tell you what they do. Particularly for a small business, you would want to make sure that it describes what you do and kind of describes what people can expect. It would also be important to make sure that that name you can also get the domain for, so that if somebody's looking up your website, it's the same as your name. You don't want them to be different. So give some thought to that, and I think we'll talk about how you go about that. Next slide.
Let's talk about business structures. And there's basically 5 that are the most common. And so let's take them one in order, and we'll tell you about the pros and the cons. The most common way to start a business is a sole proprietorship. It's really very easy to do. If you see little kids selling lemonade, they're basically a sole proprietor. And the drawback of a sole proprietor is that you don't have any liability protection. But with a sole proprietorship, you can buy liability insurance. So if that's a problem to you, that's solvable. The other thing with a sole proprietorship is you need to protect your name. Unless your company name is your own personal name, any other name you need to protect. So you need to do a DBA, a doing business as, and that'll protect your name. A partnership is very similar to a sole proprietorship, but it's for more than one person. And partnerships can be problems. They can cause problems, and a lot of them fail because the partnership fails. So I recommend if you go into a partnership, you make sure you start by doing a partnership agreement. And in that agreement, you need to have a way to value the company every year so everybody knows what the company's worth. You need to give a outline of each partner's job so that they're separate and each partner can be responsible for handling his area of the business. And finally, you need to have an agreement on how you're going to split up. Partnerships split for a lot of reasons. And if you've got the plan to split up all done, it really makes it much easier. So the next level of corporations that do give you a little bit of liability protection are an S corporation, a C corporation, and an LLC. And each of these corporations have an advantage for a different reason. So probably the most common corporation type these days is a limited liability company. It's fairly inexpensive to start. You can start a company. There's lots of outfits that'll help you do it online. The biggest disadvantage of a LLC is that in the state of California, you have to pay $800 taxes a year to be a corporation, and that's whether you make a nickel or not. So sometimes it's easier to start as a sole proprietorship. Once the business gets going, you can always switch to another type. In an LLC, you can actually fill out a single form on the profitability of the business and add it to your personal income tax. You don't have to do a separate income tax. An S corporation is just like that also. You pay the $800 a year. You have some limited liability protection, and you can outline the corporate profit and loss on a single form and add that to your personal income tax. And the last one and most rigorous is a corporation, and that actually is a legal person. You create it, it exists as long as you leave it. It's owned by stock. You can trade the stock. You can sell the corporation easily, but there's extra bookkeeping that you have to do. You have to do a board meeting every month or every year. So those are the real quick analysis of the five, and start with the least expensive as our recommendation, and then go up when you need some of the advantages of the other types of corporation. Next slide. One of the things to do, I mentioned the DBA earlier, and if you see at the top of the slide, there's a website. If you go to that website, you'll be able to do a search very quickly of the name that you've chosen to see if it's taken by somebody else. And if it's not taken, then you can take it. And then right there online, you can fill out a form to reserve this name for you. And you get the form notarized, and you can either take it into City Hall or you can mail it. And the last step that you have to take is advertise in a local newspaper. And I recommend you find a local paper as opposed to the LA Times. And generally, if you find a small local newspaper, you can do the whole thing for less than $100. So if you're going to be a sole proprietor, get your DBA. Next slide.
Bob mentioned earlier about getting a separate bank account, and we recommend either using a credit union if you have access to one, or a small independent local business bank. Nothing is wrong with Chase or with Wells Fargo, except you'll never get to really know anybody there. By the time you get a relationship, they'll be transferred to some other place. So we recommend a small business bank. They have enough money for you. They have enough services for you, but most important, you'll be able to establish a relationship with that bank. So look around your neighborhood and find a independent business bank and or a credit union. They're both ways to save money on service charges and more importantly, getting a good relationship with those financial institutions. Next slide.
You probably want to think about insurance when you go into business. If you start as a sole proprietor, I recommend that you can buy liability insurance. You need to think about property. If you have expensive machinery that you're using in your business or other things, you probably want to get some property insurance. When you hire employees, you're required by law to get workman's comp insurance. So once you have people working for you, unless they're direct relatives, you need to look into getting workman's comp. Health insurance is not required in a small business, but it becomes a really sought after benefit, and you're paying for it with pre-tax dollars. So it's a good investment for you, and it's certainly a good investment to help you lure really good employees. And of course, you need auto insurance. You can't go without that. Next slide. So let's talk about funding. This is the question we get asked the most. And 90% of small businesses get started using your savings, equity in any property that you might own, and what we like to refer to as FFF, or friends, family, and fools. It's as I said, really hard to get initial funding, but there are ways you can avoid needing as much money to start by being really frugal. You look for used and free stuff. When I furnished my office, I used all used furniture. And at the time, the big financial companies were going broke overnight, and I found some really nice furniture for 10 cents on the dollar. Another common way to start is to use credit card financing, but the interest rates are so high that we really recommend that you don't do it or only do it for a really short period of time. Next slide.
I want to talk just briefly about accounting. We talked earlier about some people are good at accounting, some people are not good at accounting, but you will need to do accounting. So we recommend it in the beginning, use start off with a simple accounting system. And as you can see here, it's a single piece of paper that you would, on the left, you would put down all the income that's coming from your customers and from sales or services, along with notes and the date that you got the money. And you would total that up every month. So you'd have one piece of paper for each month. Then on the right side, you'd write down every time that you spent money for services or to buy inventory or services, products, or things for your business like cell phone bill, maybe rent. and add those up. Now, at the end of the month, you've got a pretty good snapshot of how your business is doing. On the right, you would have all of your expenses. On the left, you have all your income. Now, for the first few months, you might actually lose money, but as long as you have your eye on the ball and have a plan to decrease the expenses and increase the sales, you've got a good plan then to make your business profitable in a short time. So if you are looking to get a copy of this form, you can send an email to either Bob or I, and we'll send it to you. Now, some people look at this and say that's kind of old-fashioned, and it is old-fashioned, but it's basic. Now, you can also use QuickBooks, and we do recommend that as you develop your business, you use QuickBooks or spreadsheets. But in the beginning, this is a good way to get good habits about keeping track of your income and expenses. And then once you've got a good track record, you can start using QuickBooks. Next slide. Now, at the end of the year, you'll have 12 of those pieces of paper that show all your sales and all of your expenses. You would go up, and this is what we call, or not what we call, it's what the IRS calls a Schedule C, the P&L from your business. And you would fill out this form, and on line 1, you would list the total of all 12 of those spreadsheets. That would be your total sales and income for the year. You would go to line 28 and put in your total of all the 12 months of expenses. And voila, on line 31, you would have your profit or loss from your business for that year. And that number actually goes directly to your 1040. Now, you can do this yourself, or you can have, a bookkeeping service do it for you. But this is the way that you, as a small business person, account for your profit and tax, profit and loss, and then ultimately your taxes. Next slide.
Lynn, you're going to wind up paying taxes when you go into business. So these are some that you got to look at. Of course, you're going to have to pay U.S. income tax, and Dick's just explained how to do it for a LLC, an S corp, a sole proprietor, and a partnership. Just fill out that form and add it to your personal income. You're going to have to do the same thing with California income tax, and you can do it basically the same way. If you have if you have employees, you're going to have to pay payroll taxes. And if you sell anything retail, you're going to need to have a California sales permit. And actually, this is one of the forms that'll actually save a little money. If you have a resale number and you're buying raw materials for your product, if you give the vendor your resale number, he doesn't have to charge you sales tax. So theoretically, that way, the final buyer only pays taxes once. And then in the city of Los Angeles, there's a personal property tax, but it starts at a fairly high level. So when you're starting out, it's probably not going to be a problem to start with. Next slide.
You're going to be operating your business from somewhere. Most small businesses probably start from your kitchen table, or maybe an extra room in your house or your garage. But you want to give some thought to how you're going to start your business. And at some point, depending on the business, you may want to get a physical location. Now, if you're looking for an office space, that's usually more reasonable price than it might be if you're on the second floor of a building as opposed to the first floor. Now, if you're going retail, you want to be on the first floor so people can find you. So you want to decide on the location. Now, some people are only going to do business online, or they might do business going door to door, or they might do business with personal contacts. So give some thought to where you're going to operate your business from. Keep in mind that if you do look for a place to rent, the asking rent is always negotiable. Both Bob and I have rented places. We also own some properties that we rent. So we know that it's always negotiable depending on the current market and what else is available. So when you get ready to do that, be sure you look at what else is available before you sign a lease. Again, we're not lawyers, but we do recommend that once you do get a lease, that you have an attorney review the lease, because the lease is probably written by the property owner, and it's probably in the property owner's favor. So an attorney can help you make sure that you're not giving away any rights, or that you're not asking for things that you should have. And also think about whether it's a net lease or a gross lease. Either one works. You just need to be aware that when you sign one lease, you may also have to pay additional expenses of the property. So the lease will tell you that, and then make sure that you include all of those costs in what you're budgeting for rent. Next slide.
Here are some of the license that you may or may not need, and some of the sources to find out about these licenses and EIN numbers. So the one I like and recommend all the time is calgold.ca.gov. And if you go to this website, up will come a page, and it'll ask you two questions. The first question is where you're located, and you click on it, and it lists all the cities, so you find your city and click on it. And then the second thing you need to tell them is what kind of business you have. So you click on that space, and up will come a list of maybe 100 different types of businesses. And you don't have to find the exact one that you're going to do, but find something really close and put that in there. And then up will come all kinds of licenses and things that you may or may not need. Now, please don't call me back and tell me you never wanted to look at that list, because most of them you don't have to do. But when you find one that you need, for instance, an EIN number, when you're doing business, you really don't want to use your social security number, because you have to give it to a lot of people. So you can go to the state and get an EIN number. It doesn't cost you anything to get it. So if you're on calgold.ca.gov, you scan down the list till you find EIN number, and you click on it, and it tells you where to go and how to get it. So, and it's that way for everything, business licenses, and they find getting a resale license and all kinds of things. So it's really a valuable website. Now, some of these others also work real well, and there's lots of information on them, but I happen to like the calgold.ca.gov. Next slide. If you're selling taxable goods, we've talked about this. This is where you go to get your seller's permit or resale license. I'll give you a second to write it down if you want. Or you can just go to that CalGold and it'll be there. Next slide.
Something that you want to be thinking about as you're developing your product and your service is to think about marketing. You want to make sure that you're able to talk about your business or your product or your service, and the marketing message is the right message, and that's something you can work with your mentor about, coming up with the right message so that you can tell a prospect, the right prospect, the person that will make a buying decision at the time that they're ready to purchase or they're in need of your product or service. So the marketing plan is coming up with that message and how you will get that message to a prospective client. And it's we have some real good workshops that are about marketing. However, we also have some mentors that worked for big companies in marketing and would be able to coach you through that. So coming up with a great idea or product is important, but marketing is even more important because you want to make sure that your potential customers know about it, and that's what marketing is all about. Next slide. The thing that you want to do is also come up with a list of all the suppliers and service providers that you will need to start your business. And this, you're kind of working toward a budget. You want to think about, if you're going to have a website, you'll need a designer to put that together, or you buy a plug-in kind of website, but you're going to need to pay for some of that. Bob talked about an insurance agent. You may have to buy supplies from wholesalers. You probably need a phone and office supplies. You'll need a way to accept payments, either PayPal or other ways of Square, and other ways of getting money from your clients for your product or service. And of course, you may need a computer and printer, and maybe even a shipper like UPS or FedEx. So give some thought to how you will be putting together your product or service and how you will get it delivered to your customer. So come up with that list of providers and suppliers along with prices so that you can actually project what your costs are going to be. Next slide. We also recommend that you come up with a workflow and standards and procedures. Even if you're all by yourself, even when you begin, you want to make sure that you have a workflow chart of how an order or how a client would enter into your business. Making sure you have a training manual. Again, even if you don't have any employees right away, you want to make sure that you have that manual, you give some thought to it, so that when you do get employees, you can actually train them from your manual that you've created, so you don't forget stuff, and that so all your customers will be treated the same way by either yourself or your workers. Depending on your business, you may need a contract or a letter of understanding with your customers so that they understand what's expected and you know when you'll get paid. Some people use purchase orders. Some people, you have a menu, not just of food, but of different product or service. So this is something that you can work with your mentor on. You can also Google it and come up with what other people have used. But you want to make sure that you document how you're going to do business, how you're going to treat your customers, how you will train your employees, so that it's easy for your customers to do business with you. Next slide.
I like this slide. Having spent my career in sales, nothing happens till somebody sells something. And I really believe that. That's why I recommended your first step is, once you have a product and service, you go out and see if you can sell it to a stranger. And while we're talking about what you do first and what you do later on, you really want to prioritize the list of things that you have to do. And so the first thing is you have to come up with a business idea. And the second thing is you have to test the business idea, see if it works. And the third thing you have to do is go get an order from a stranger. And once you've done that, now you can begin doing the other steps. You don't need to decide in the beginning whether you're going to be a sole proprietor or an LLC. You don't need to decide in the beginning who's going to make your website. You really need to take things in order as they come. And a lot of the permits and stuff, you don't need them till you really have the idea, you know you can sell it, and you've actually sold something. So remember to do things in priority. Your to-do list is going to be way too long to ever get to the end. So do the most important things first. Next slide. So this is our SCORE website. It's la.score.org. And if you go to this website, there's all kinds of really valuable information. And you can see the headings there. There's find a mentor, some of the workshops and events that we have, and templates and tools. One of the templates that you can find is a step list or a list on starting a business. It's about 20 items, and it's arranged in the priority of which you ought to do them. So that alone is very valuable. And when you look up the mentors, you can look up our background and find somebody that has the skills that you're looking for, and thumb through some of the other things on the website. There's all kinds of valuable information. Next slide.
Now, hopefully, as we've gone along today, we've sparked some interest in and maybe answered some of the questions that you came to this workshop to get answered. However, as so often happens, it brings up more questions. So we're going to take some question and answers from the people that are in the room. Now, this is a recorded workshop, so if you're watching it recorded, you won't be able to ask the questions. But if you're watching it live on August 2nd, 2023, you'll be able to ask questions. And that's one of the things that Bob arrived, because we're both SCORE mentors, we're trained, we have a lot of experience. But other mentors are the same way. They have a lot of experience. And if they can't get the answer that you need, you can look for another mentor, or you can go to the website, or that mentor can look any place in the nation. We've got 22,000 mentors across the nation in different businesses, in different professions, that are volunteers that'll help you to, as we mentioned earlier, to be able to make good business decisions and to be successful.
And
do we have any questions?
Excuse me, Dick, while we're on the screen, our email's listed there. So if we don't get to your question, make sure you make a note of one of our emails, and you can email us and we'll answer you by email.
Okay, so we do have a question. It is Christine is a graphic designer. She wants to know if she should structure her business as an LLC.
I think I'll field that one. Christine certainly could do that, but I think Bob covered it real well during the workshop about the cost of it, and the maybe there's not the need to start. It might not be the first thing you need to do. Again, we're not giving legal advice, but we can provide you with a template of all the pros and cons of an LLC versus a sole proprietor versus any of the corporations. Again, our mission is to give you the information and the knowledge to make a good decision. So I would say in the direct answer, it's not the first thing you need to do. But if you will email either Bob or I, we'd be glad to share that template with you so that you can make a good decision on your own.
Great. And then I know that you did discuss getting a mentor quite a bit. Just one other question on that, just to reiterate, how do I get in contact with a SCORE mentor to help me with my business? If you could just let us know once again how someone could go about doing that.
Yes, you can go to losangeles.score.org. And as you recall, when Bob was showing the front page of the there it is, score.org. You'll be able to see the mentors, and you can actually scroll through the 100 or so mentors that are in LA County, and you can see their experiences, and you can see their skills, and you can contact them directly and make an appointment to see them on Zoom and get your questions answered. And again, it could be a one-time visit, or it could be ongoing. So it's really up to you to reach out and to find a mentor on SCORE.
You know, I'd be interested in asking the attendees a question. Can you put in the chat box the kind of company you're thinking of starting? That would be interesting for us. Also, one thing that we didn't discuss that's really valuable when you go into business is to have an elevator pitch. And it basically asks you to be able to describe your business in an elevator ride from the first to the third floor. You've got to be able to sum up all of what your business does, the advantages, and do it all in a very short amount of time. And this elevator pitch becomes valuable because when you're talking to people, instead of just introducing yourself, you give them a 2-minute or a 1-minute elevator pitch, and you can see if they're interested or not. And it's amazing what you'll find when you do that. And I never did till I ran into a guy on a golf course and he asked me what I was doing, and he turned out to be a really good customer. So that's when I started using my elevator pitch.
All right, we do have a question from an audience member, from Sandra. Do I have to get a business license before the start of the business, or can I operate and then apply as the business is going?
I'll field that one.
We're not lawyers, but my recommendation is you get started and have a functioning business and then go check out the licenses. If you go down and get a license before you ever get started and it doesn't work, you've wasted time and effort and money. So, and Dick may disagree with me, but
yeah, it really depends on the city that you are operating in. Some cities require a business license, others don't. So I would go to the website of the city or go to City Hall and see if a license is required. And sometimes there's a charge, sometimes there's not. But as Bob said, it's not the first thing you need to do. Now, certainly if you're operating a restaurant or a physical location, you do want to have a business license in place.
And certainly if you're in contracting, for instance, or something where you're doing a lot of dealing with the public, then you probably need a license right away, pretty soon.
Okay.
Again, you can get a session with a SCORE mentor and explain what you do, and they'll be able to kind of guide you through what's really required. Again, taking the list of the 22 things that we have talked about and see what you need to do, and not only what you need to do, but what you need to do next. because you may already have some of these things done, and you want to find out what's the next step that you need to do to bring your business closer to reality.
The other thing too that I mentioned, the calgoal.ca.gov, you can go there and fill out the information, and it'll tell you more or less whether you need a business license.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions, and we're just about at our time. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much to our presenters, Bob O'Brien and Dick Mader. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. As a reminder, if you missed any part of this presentation, it will be available to rewatch here on the library's YouTube channel. And lastly, if you're interested in more programs like this, please check out the library's online calendar for upcoming events. All right, and have a great afternoon, everyone.